Okay, you should see me on there if it's working.
You are there.
Yep.
Groovy. I will leave then.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Yeah,
All right.
here we go.
Boom.
Okay, good.
I just got.
You need to raise this.
The projector?
Yeah, it needs about a quarter of an inch, about a half an inch raise.
I do it. I think this.
Lower the screen, you can,
Okay.
Okay, so now it looks.
Can y'all hear?
Just heard that with a lot of feedback.
Yeah, I know.
You need direction.
Can everybody mute on your side, please? Everybody watching, just mute. Carolyn, could you mute?
Can't hear you.
Carolyn, could you mute your computer, please? We're trying to get everybody muted because we're having a problem with the microphone in the community room. So if everyone else is muted, we should be able to probably just use my phone for the audio. Is it working? Pardon? Right, but I'm talking to them through my phone. Can you guys hear me through my phone?
If we mute your computer, though, it shouldn't have the feedback, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we mute your computer, it shouldn't have the feedback.
Yeah, but then we also can't communicate the same way.
Can we use your phone, though?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the plan.
Oh, okay.
But we still have to be able to hear them. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Okay.
So is that working? Can you guys hear?
Can you give us a thumbs up if you're hearing us?
Okay. Sorry that this is not optimal.
Computer behind us over here. This computer's also got sound on. So when Ann and I were in the audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, on the way, we were in a taxi, and there were 2 or 3 stones on the way to on the road, and all the taxis stopped moving. And within about 15 seconds, this mountain that was to the left of the road basically just collapsed and covered the road with about 30 to 45 feet of dirt. And somewhere in all of that, people said, well, great virtue brings great obstacles. And so we're not having our road covered with dirt, but we're having the internet version of same. And so I take it as a sign of wonderfully great merit for us to proceed. We will start with those of you who may know the invocation to Ajahn Rinpoche in Tibetan. We'll do that first, and then we'll do the Great Blazing Bliss in English. Kyabda Gilwan Namda Kirmebe, Gadin Sunden Tinchen Lamaje, Rigzim Yerme Tuten Gatola, Sol Wadep Sonyam Lentarchin Sho. Omahumri, great bliss blazing power palace, where wisdom wants no bliss and emptiness, blissful lotus ones with no wanting, Vajra sun great glory shines from there. Amitabha Dorje Chur, Lokesh Lord compassion passionate, Lotus Lord Master of world and peace, power Heruka of Chansloping. Indra Warahi, Limjot King great bliss treasure, Mind these Vijay Marus, all mudras, high-low dancing in bliss emptiness. Power wielding Daki host, you know seen and empty as the same. You dance your Vajra form, shake 3 worlds, you laugh and ceaseless speech routes we round. Red light rays diffuse all worlds in peace, stir and gather worldly senses, granted 2 feet our supreme desire, Vajra passion of your own heart mind. With great Vajra hooks and lassos you bind to great bliss all you know and see. Enslaving the endless magic net like sesame pods burst open with 3 roots power God host has to array. Bless and grant us with respect I pray. For in your city power in all feet high and low that I desire. May all beings always have happiness and its causes. May all beings always be free of pain and its causes. May all beings always be pain-free and live happily. May no beings ever cling to those near nor spurn those far. For as long as space abides, as long as the world remains, just so long may I be there, resolving all beings' pain. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds bright, orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving, love, mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds bright, orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving, love, mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels and bright this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving, love, mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. Oh, like moons and waters, sights these sea-buds, we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. So I raise Bodhi through our boundless days. Oh, like moons and waters, sights these sea-buds, we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. So I rest in their clear minds here. I raise Bodhi through 4 boundless days. Oh, like moons and waters, like seas and clouds, we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. So I rest in their clear minds here. I raise Bodhi through 4 boundless days. If somebody has come on late and does not have their microphone muted, please mute your microphone.
Carolyn, I think it's you. Could you? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Let us go. Some of you may not have this, and it's okay, but for those of you who have prayer books, please go to page 39, and we'll go to the mandala offering and in English and the request for teachings. This ground perfumed and with flowers strewn, Mount Meru, 4 islands, sun and moon. I give serving them as Buddha lands, whereby may all enter into your lands. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Ram Yate. Reflecting on all beings, our specific states of mind, great or lesser, will you please turn our wheel of Dharma now? So welcome everybody. I think I just want to say a few words and I'll give it to Claire and then she'll give it back to me. Just want to say this is a great moment. We have, of course, taught the foundational practices before. All of the people who are mentors studied them with us and have completed them with us. But this is our first venture in doing it over the internet, using the web, and it marks a tremendous move in the growth of this community and our spiritual lives together. And I want to highlight that by saying, you know, we don't force anybody to believe anything in our practice, but it is said that doing the foundational practices eradicates and cleanses all of the obstructive karma since rebirth immemorial. And that, if we think about it, is a pretty mind-blowing statement. And it's good just to entertain that as to what that might mean and the enormity of that. And it speaks to the significance of the foundational practices. And, you know, there are famous statements made by a lot of teachers that the foundational practices are actually more profound than the actual path. And one of the ways it may be more profound if rebirth is beginningless and the foundational practices have this power, that is indeed an enormous profundity. And speaking for myself sitting in this chair, I'm a bit quaking in my boots with the thought of just how profound an undertaking this is for all of us, both for you who are starting practice and for us who are guiding it, and that we are sharing our karmic destinies with one another, and of course we are hoping for the best for both mentors, mentoring friends, and everybody who is practicing together. But this is a very, very large undertaking, and we offer it with a great deal of sobriety and seriousness, and also lightness and joy. And we really are looking forward to people benefiting. This is the gateway to the practices, foundational practices for the more advanced practices of Tantra and Dzogchen. And within Tantra and Dzogchen, realization of Buddhahood, freedom, understanding the nature of the mind are all said to be possible in a very, very accelerated manner. And so it's something very, very great that we are offering to people who wish to participate. And we also understand that some people are, you know, trying this on for size. Some people may be able to participate at their own pace. They may take it in and let it digest for some months or years. And some people might undertake this with gusto. And we are certainly not smart enough to know who will be whom, but we want to support all of you. We want to support all of you at least to become familiar with what we're teaching. And the course of teaching the foundational practices will go through somewhere through the first quarter of the next calendar year. And then we are starting our Dzogchen Cycles program, which is, of course, open to everybody, and we're encouraging everybody who's doing this to do that. And, you know, there may be some considerations of how you time out your practice, given what we teach then, but it's a completely doable issue. but we definitely think that what we will be teaching will be totally complementary to the foundational practices, supportive of them, and the foundational practices will likewise be supportive of everything we're teaching in Dzogchen cycles. And just FYI, the foundational practices are not requisite for people doing the Dzogchen cycles, and that's a very, very clear distinction we've made, though we will be letting people know about the foundational practices in that teaching. And at some point, we will be, no doubt, encouraging people to be doing them, but they're not mandatory for that group of teachings. That being said, I want to hand the baton over to Miss Claire, who is now going to be in 2 places at one time. Is that okay with the red light on?
Yeah, that means it's recording.
Was it not up to then?
It was not, I mean, I wasn't planning to record it. I just felt a little bit paranoid and wanted to make sure we got at least one digital copy. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So what I'm hoping you will do is deal with some of the administrative issues, and if you don't deal with all of them, I'll remind you.
okay. I've got all the ones from our conversation earlier, so if there's anything else, I'm happy to try and address that too. Can everybody hear me okay? All good? Okay. Well, Richard can, so I'm going to plunge in. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about here is the student-mentor contact, or the contact with a mentoring friend. And so I'm just taking this from what was on the web page, but I wanted to be sure that everybody was kind of on the same page and, you know, knows roughly what the expectations are for the contact. So the expectation is 1 monthly contact between the mentoring friend and the student. And so I think there was some confusion thinking maybe that just meant once during that first 6-week period that we're in right now, but it means once a month. So, you know, if you want to have a meeting in September and then you want to have another meeting in October, that's the plan. And, you know, the reason that we set out these guidelines is that we wanted to make sure that we were giving enough contact time to students and mentoring friends to make sure that, you know, if students have questions, that they have an opportunity to ask. And at the same time, you know, we don't want this to feel like a really burdensome addition to your schedule. So we want to make sure that we're also not overloading anybody. And right now, the mentors have at most 2 students assigned to them, but when it comes to Dzogchen cycles, we might have up to 5. So we're looking for a way to have contact between people without it being, you know, something that becomes just too much of a time commitment. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, that there's the expectation of a monthly interaction, and I'll say more about it shortly. The other thing is during this initial 6-week period, and we're in the second 2-week period now, so I posted some new links. They went up, you know, ideally, the 25th was like 2 days ago. That would have been the beginning of this second 2-week period. So we're going right now just through the basics of how to recite foundational practices. So if you're wondering, you know, where is this going? Right now, we just want to make sure that everybody who's new to the foundational practices knows how to go through the entire text. So we're starting as gently as possible. I know that in this group, probably most of y'all are already familiar with it. But if nothing else, it's kind of a review. And there's a really, really nice, if for some reason you haven't watched it, that first video, it's a 30-minute introduction by Anne to what foundational practices are. So if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. Now the refuge and bodhichitta videos are up. That's for the second 2 weeks. So the idea during this first 6-week period is that once a week, the students will check in with their assigned mentoring friend and just let us know how it's going. So that could be just something really simple like, you know, hey, I've been, you know, working this into my daily schedule. I don't have any questions right now. Or it could be, what about this, where you're setting up the, you know, the syllables around the tongue, or something about the visualization. So just, you know, basically, pardon?
I'm not doing that yet.
Oh, right. You're not doing that yet, never mind. But anyway, if you have some kind of technical question,
We are.
yeah, you might be. So if you have a technical question, that's what the email is for. It's also what those monthly conversations are for. And then, so once we're out of this initial 6-week period, then you'll go to every other week with email contact. And I also just want to be clear here that it's the responsibility of the student to make the contact with
Once we're out of the 6-week,
the initial 6-week period, then it goes to every other week. That's what it said on the,
okay.
So you want it weekly for now.
yes,
A week.
please. Yeah. Yeah, a weekly email for now and a monthly chat. Yeah. I think the sense is that like now is when people who are brand new to the foundational practices might have the most questions. And really the emails are just to kind of, you know, check in, or if you have questions about how you should be doing it, ask that. Yeah, Janet just asked, in case y'all couldn't hear, that isn't the monthly chat supposed to be recorded? Yes, it is, and we're going to talk in a minute about why we want to record that. So if you're feeling really anxious about that, please don't worry. We'll explain why, and you know there are options. So yeah, does the contact schedule make sense to everybody? Okay. The other ways to get in contact with each other are through the Google group, which is now set up, and I've invited everybody who's doing the Foundational Practices program to that group. So if you either haven't received that invitation or if you weren't sure how to actually accept that invitation, please email me. And I think y'all all have my email address now. And I'll be happy to walk you through that if you have any troubles. And I know I've been getting email messages from people, so I think people are figuring out how to use it. And I just want to say that that Google group is mostly for students that kind of have some peer contact. So if you have a question, or if you came up with a really great way of, you know, doing prostration so you don't hurt your knees, for instance, that's a great place to share it. And you can, sorry, I'm just gonna wiggle in here so I can get around his head. Sorry. No, you're fine. You're allowed to write. It's okay. So yeah, so that's another way of making contact. And that one, there's no expectation of how much or how little you're supposed to post. I just want it to be clear that that's really for students to communicate among each other. And then for mentors, we're going to have, you know, some times alone with Anna and Harvey when we can ask questions and have our own kind of, you know, contact among ourselves. Does that make sense? Okay.
But mentors are welcome to chime in on the, what are we calling it, a blog or a listserv?
Well, it's a Google group.
The Google group, mentors can chime in on the Google group if they want to.
So are mentors part of the group as well, or just
Yes.
students?
Yeah, I invited everybody. So mentors and students, and also Ann and Harvey. So, you know, right. So, you know, if you're thinking of what to post on that group, I mean, everybody can see it, just so everybody knows. And there are some guidelines. I've posted these on that Google group. So if you ever want to go back and review, you can always find these here. I just actually would like to kind of briefly go over them because I noticed there's not that many views on this document on the Google group. So, so the purpose of the group is really for people to be able to support each other. So these guidelines are in keeping with trying to make it a that group. So the first guideline, you know, obviously we would like you to share your experiences, any questions, you know, related to this foundational practices program. So it's really for us to talk about what we're doing together. That's the purpose of the group. So the things we're asking you not to do is please don't use this group to advertise services. So not yours. I mean, even if your like root teacher is coming to town, that's wonderful. We want to hear about it, but not on the Google group. So you have all of our emails, you know, but the group really is to communicate about this foundational practices program. It's also not to talk about other foundational practices programs. It's really just to support this group and what we're doing, and we just want to keep it focused and on task. let's see. Finally, and this is like super important and I think speaks to right speech, please be cordial. Even if you disagree with somebody, we're all Dharma brothers and sisters here. So please be polite to them and please refrain from profanity. We want to have an environment that feels nurturing. So those are the things please not to do. I mean, please feel free to post, share great ideas, share questions, share struggles, because that's, you know, why we have each other as a group. So any question about the Google group or how to use it?
A question about where to view this document, that it had gotten few views. Where would we view it?
Yeah, so in case y'all couldn't hear, Jennifer just asked, how do you actually view this document? So every time you get an email that somebody sends to the group, at the bottom of that email, there are several different web links, and there's one that says view this as a web forum. If you click on the link that says view this as a web forum, it's going to take you to the web page that has all of the topics for discussion that anybody's ever posted. And this is really cool. You can post something with an attachment, with a picture. You know, if you have a great setup for how you like to, you know, do your mandala offering when we get to that, you can post a picture of it. So it has all those functions. But, you know, if you want to view it as a web page, you can just click there. You're welcome. And if you want to bookmark it, you know, you can click there, bookmark it, and then you can always come back. Other questions? Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about before I turn it over to Harvey Law is this recording of the student-mentor contact and why we're asking people to do that. So I just want to kind of underscore that this is the beta version of our foundational practices program, and we really are actually trying to figure out, you know, what is helpful in an interaction. You know, how should mentoring friends actually be supporting the people that they're working with? How do we train mentoring friends? We've never done this before. So basically, a large part of the reason that we are asking people to record their video interactions is so that we can figure out what are the best practices, and also so that we as mentors can learn and grow. Because if there's no opportunity for us to have someone else who's more experienced review our interactions, you know, we as mentors are not going to be as good as we would be otherwise. So it's really an important way, you know, not just to have the experience of interacting, but to be able to reflect on the experience of interacting. I was a certified classroom teacher before well, it was like a couple of lifetimes ago, it seems like. But the way you grow as a teacher is that you have other more experienced teachers and other supervisors come in and watch you and give you feedback. So we're just trying to do the same basic thing with this. And I just would also like to say, you know, the mentoring, and I think Harvey is going to talk about this more, but the mentoring friend is not a therapist. They're not necessarily like your, you know, best friend or confidant. So if there's something that you don't want, like, us to know, or you don't want us to hear, if we're doing, it'll just be mentors and Ann and Harvey. If you don't want that group of people to hear it, maybe you shouldn't be saying it to the mentor. So this is, you know, it's not a therapy type relationship. It's more like what's going on for you in your practice, you know, how can we help to support you in that practice, but it's not necessarily like super, super intimate stuff.
You got instructions for how to record.
Yeah, so the mentors are going to be the ones doing that.
Okay.
So we're going to be working with them to make sure everybody knows how to do it.
So is this on Skype or how do we?
Skype, if your mentor wants to do a hangout on air, if you want to do FaceTime. I don't think we have like one way that we're recommending or asking people to do it. You know, I mean, if you both have an Apple phone, it might be easy to do it on FaceTime. I don't have an Apple phone, so I can't do FaceTime. So yeah, it may just be something that everybody works out between, you know, themselves and their mentoring friends.
You will need to make a video of whatever platform you're using, and you'll just need to make sure that that video is usable in Google Groups and Google Plus. but I think in most instances they are. But we'll probably have some learning there. But you know, Claire has promised to bring forward some guidelines for the mentors soon.
Yes, I actually thought about putting these in the email that I sent y'all today, but I didn't want to start like mixing too many things into one email. So I'll send the mentors an email with instructions on how to set up and record in these different, you know, these different video conference services. And you can always talk to me. So there's not that many mentors. If you're not familiar with this, or if you try it and it doesn't work, please talk to me and we'll figure it out together. I don't want anybody to feel super frustrated because he can't make the technology work.
And as Claire says, this is beta, and we're expecting glitches just like we had to begin with. So let's try to be relaxed about it all. Do you want to say anything about the peer support meeting? Or not yet?
I can. Would you like me?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Do we have a date for that? Yeah.
no, we do not.
Okay. To be TBD.
Yes. So the last thing I'm planning to talk about is the one last component of our sort of like interactive element of this program that's not up and running yet, which is the monthly, basically just chat that at the beginning I will be facilitating. So this is really a chat for foundational practices students to come together, you know, just have a little bit of like peer contact. So we're not inviting the mentors to these. Some of the, I mean, me in the beginning, but maybe a couple of the other mentors would be facilitating. But it's really for students to be able to, you know, share any issues that are coming up, or, you know, just basically make contact with each other and build a real sense of community. That's my understanding what we're doing. We haven't actually set a date for the first of those yet. So please bear with us as we get all these components up and running one at a time. And we also have our gala coming up this Saturday, so that's been taking some bandwidth. So yeah, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank everybody for patience and cooperation and energy.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
So I want to say some things, and time is completely out of control here, so please forgive me. It may not be necessary, but given the amount of tread wear I have on my tires and what I've seen, it kind of is necessary to say this, that the relationship between the mentoring friend and the student is a strictly spiritual guidance relationship, and there, in no size, shape, or form should there ever be a romantic relationship between a mentoring friend and their student. I didn't really look carefully at the demographics and all of the pairings, but we all may think that none of us would ever go there, but one of the reasons this needs to be said is that when we start getting into relationships where there's either an implicit or explicit felt difference of hierarchy or difference of power, like it or not, the emotional dynamics that get triggered are very, very powerful. And so for mentors, you may not feel powerful, you may not feel like you're God, and you aren't, but your students might, because of any numbers of familial relationships they've had, either see you as God or the devil, and depending on their taste and romantic relationships, might be particularly attracted because of that very reason. You know, if we don't run across that kind of problem ever, we are blessed. But if you start feeling those kinds of vibrations or those kinds of energies, the mentors should really talk with Claire, Sharon, or Ann or Harvey. Students, if you're feeling some weird vibrations from your mentoring friend, certainly feel free to talk to Sharon, Claire, Ann, or Harvey. This has got to be a very, very pure relationship. And if you've been involved with Buddhist groups in the United States for more than 8 years, you are, I'm sure, familiar with the fact that a huge number of teachers have tripped on these kinds of situations. It's not good for the teachers, it's not good for the students, it's not good for the Dharma, it's terrible for everybody. It's very, very confusing when it happens. And I have certainly had close colleagues who've been involved with this, and it's terrible for everybody. It's just terrible for everybody. And I just want to be very, very strong that we cannot have that happen. We have to have this center not have that happen here. Really, really important. And just to reiterate what Claire said about the video supervision for the mentors, it really is for the mentoring friends that we're doing this video supervision. I'm almost tempted to be a little bit jocular in terms of the students and say, I'm sorry, it's not about you. You know, you might feel that, well, they're all looking at me, the student, and to see, you know, what a terrible student I am, but it's actually not about that. And we're not even looking to see how terrible the mentors are, by the way. We're really just trying to be very, very constructively offering a feedback. And I'm more or less of the school of thought that if it hasn't happened to me or if I haven't done it, I shouldn't do it to anybody else. So I will let everybody know that I have been involved in this kind of either receiving or giving this kind of feedback started in probably 1987 was the first time I started getting involved in this. And yes, of course, it's terrifying to be videotaped and imagine a whole bunch of people looking at your work, but it's also amazingly useful in improving our performance as mentors in training or teachers in training or whatever. So if you have an enormous amount of angst about this, you know, our point is not to send you to the emergency room with a panic attack. And we certainly want to encourage people to think about it carefully and to think about what it's offering the mentors in training and what the student in turn gains if their mentor in training has got a higher level of skill that they're developing. It really is ultimately to the benefit of the students and to the benefit of the mentors in training. And it's just, you know, can you imagine doing surgery with somebody over your neck? I mean, but, you know, so this is part and parcel of what we think is best practice for really giving the mentors in training the best skills to offer our students the best care that we can. We want people to really be supported in their practice. In terms of the purpose of the mentoring friend, it really initially it's to get the practices straight. If you need any clarifications of your practice, please use your mentoring friends for that. If you're coming up against any issues, positive or negative or question marks, certainly share that with your mentoring friend. Their friends are here to listen to and support you. They are not therapists. Everybody wants to be a therapist. Some of us become therapists. But mentoring friends are not therapists and should not be expected to deal with anything resembling therapeutic issues such as difficulties at work, your relationships, or your life changes. So if you want to share what's affecting your practice, you'll be offered a sympathetic ear. But please be respectful of this particular relationship. mentoring friends are not here to listen to the difficulties of your life. And it's not the mentoring friend's job to guide you through the difficulties of your life. And we all have life difficulties. The main point is to make sure you have the practices straight. As the relationship grows, there may be appropriate times to talk about how practice is affecting your daily life, or in a kind of overview way to talk about how aspects of your life might be posing challenges to your practice. I'm having some relationship issues. It's really hard for me to find time right now to do my practice regularly. Okay, we're all human. We all understand what that means. We don't need to know what your partner said to you at breakfast this morning. That's not what this relationship is about. If it were to come up that the mentoring friend feels that the conversation is getting steered in a kind of not fruitful direction, they will be encouraged to refocus the conversation onto your practice, the details of it, the effects of your practice on you as you practice. We definitely want you to be monitoring that. Or, how does it affect your life when you are doing practice? We want you very much to look at that. It's very, very much of concern for us to understand how is doing practice affecting you. Certainly, if you're doing something and any part of your body is adversely being affected, we want to know that immediately. And we want to know if there's either adverse or positive effects during practice and after practice. Okay. Are there any questions about what I've said? If you do have a question, you're going to need to demute. But yeah, just demute and hopefully we can see and we'll hear, and we'll need to mute from our side. Are there any questions? You're all wonderful. So I'll try to pare back what I plan to say to the bare minimum. The first thing we're doing is learning how to recite the foundational practices. One of the great fortunes that Ann and I have had is we've spent 2.5 to 3 years in Asia, very, very close to all sorts of Tibetan Buddhist communities. And one of the things that happens in classic Tibetan Buddhist communities is kids learn an enormous amount of material by heart, and they don't have a clue as to what they're saying. They're just human tape recorders, and when you're young, it's actually very, very easy. We all might be able to remember what it was like to be young. And, if you're just sort of singing in the morning, and, you just get all this stuff, and, there you are, you turn 21, and you've got this whole encyclopedic kind of, memory bank of tape-recorded material in your brain because you've been reciting it for, like 15 years. We're not doing quite that, but we're asking you to learn how to recite the foundational practices first without having the clearest, most precise understanding of how to go through the practice, but I'm going to go through the practice pretty carefully, but not in all the detail that you'll get when we actually teach the practices. Purpose of today is to talk about just recitation. For the purpose of recitation, if you need a guide for the music, please use the Heart Essence of the Vast Expanse. We went to a great deal of effort to have both Jade Ma's recording of the foundational practices in Tibetan, and then some both individual and group recordings of the foundational practices in English. And there's even, I think, the longer recording of the Jigme Lingpa foundational practices, probably in English. So there's a CD in the back of this book, and it's wonderful. If you need guidance on doing the actual liturgical in English chanting, please use this book, Heart Essence of the Vast Expanse. it's, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if this is helpful, but there are also some videos of people going through the sadhana. So if you want to sort of have like a video and go through it together.
Go through the what?
The text.
Liturgy, the
Yeah.
text.
Yeah. So I know I have, pardon?
Where are those videos?
If it would be helpful, I can put links to them on there. Yeah, I'm sorry. That wasn't on my list of things to have up right now, but if I can put those up.
Yeah.
So you can have that as another, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry for everyone.
Okay.
Did you say you posted kind of something for this TV? I think.
Yeah. If y'all didn't hear what Donna just asked, she asked, wait, so I sent y'all something about these next 2 weeks? Yeah, these first 6 weeks is kind of divided into 3 sections of 2 weeks each, and they just focus on different different parts of reciting the liturgy. So the first, I think there were 3 videos in the first section. Yeah, so each time that I'm posting the next weeks or the next sections videos, I'll send y'all an email. Yeah, I'm just putting these links to the YouTube videos on the foundational practices page that you already have. So if you haven't already bookmarked that page, you'll definitely want to do that. The links to videos are on there. The link to the calendar is on there. These videos, once they're processed on YouTube, the links are posted on there. So that's like your homepage for all this stuff, and that's where they are.
Maybe you could even resend that particular. Sorry.
Thank you.
Already 3 times.
People misplace these things.
I think sometimes people don't open the emails too.
That's
So
true.
I would just request you please to open the emails, and they may not all be relevant to you, but it'll save a lot of time if you open them and see if they are relevant.
So recitation, a lot of this is really, in a way, quite foreign to our way of doing business in the modern West. But one of the things that traditional Buddhists do is recite. They recite a lot. And we certainly don't want to overbear people with the act of recitation. But if people really want to get seriously involved with the foundational practices and be really immersed in it, at some point, it's not a technical point, it's not something I can say when, but there is an expectation that basically every day one will recite the whole of the foundational practices from beginning to end. It's just part of a commitment to practice. And it's very, very easy to get kind of responsive to that, either in a power and control way or an obsessive manner. Ideally, we see this as an opportunity for really continuing to train and continuing to maintain a kind of clarity and a purity of mind that allows deeper and deeper understanding to dawn. If finishing the foundational practices has clarified the obscurations from beginningless time, doing the foundational practices daily is said to preventively basically keep the mirror clean. So it's a way of allowing blessings and clarity and realization to continue function optimally once we have concluded the foundational practices. And there are, I think, innumerable blessings that arise out of being able to maintain some practice like this, come thick or thin. And it really has to do with almost, if the nature of the mind is ultimately like a vajra, we are both fruitionally, we of course want to almost naturally and effortlessly realize that kind of vajra nature. But on the practice side, being able to bring that kind of fortitude, patience, and energy, and focus, and wisdom into our daily lives makes the eventual fruitional experience of the Vajra mind so much more likely. And the skills that are developed in doing the foundational practices in 101 ways support every form of subsequent practice. And just slowly and slowly over time and over time, it just becomes clear how useful the skills of the foundational practices are in innumerable and sometimes even surprising ways. And one of the joys of practice is just actually seeing that unfold. So I do want to go over the words and the purposes of these in a very cursory manner tonight. And so I just want to go over the words and the visualizations that go with the words, starting with refuge. And, you know, refuge is the profound gateway to practice. And there'll be if you have any questions, please also make use of tantric practice and Nyingma. That's what we'll be using mostly, along with your mentoring friends. What's that? It's available now on Kindle? Okay, it's available on Kindle. Thank you. There are some good used copies available on Amazon. And it would be good for you to read those sections on refuge, bodhichitta, and vajrasattva. So we're using Anne's translation in chantable English, with the point being that we can go along with the meter of the Tibetan chant. 3 jewels are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Refuge means both looking at what we are seeking protection from and also what we're trying to emulate and absorb. We're certainly seeking the guidance of the Buddha, the teachings of the Dharma, and the community of the Sangha. The 3 root bliss-filled ones here refer to the Lama, the personal deity, and the Dakini. And so in tantric practice, the place of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha also are in parallel significance seen to be the Lama, the personal deity, and the Dakini. The Lama is the gateway to Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. That's the personal connection to our teachers. The personal deities allow the realization of Buddha body, speech, and mind, ordinary and extraordinary accomplishments. And the Dakini, the skygoers, bestow the quick means for realization, and they facilitate the practice of Buddha activities. Now, all of this is, in a way, shorthands for volumes and volumes of teachings, but I just want to give you at least some gloss of what some of these things mean. In the tradition that we're practicing, which is known as the Longchen Yingtik, Lama usually takes the form of Guru Rinpoche, and the personal deity for this particular lineage is the standing four-armed Avalokiteshvara, and the Dakini is the form of the Great Bliss Queen, the Red Yeshe Tsogyo, and I'm sure there are pictures of that in the Heart Essence of Vast Expanse. So the next line is, and so the 3 real jewels is the outer vehicles, the 3 root bliss-filled ones begin to talk about the tantric vehicles. The channels, winds, bright orbs, this Bodhi mind is referring to the practices of the higher vehicles of Tantra, where the channels and the energies and there are specific energetic orbs are taught and practiced. If you will attend our first weekend teaching in May of the Dzogchen cycles, there will be some very, very specific and amazing practices related to the bright orbs. The Tibetan is the word tigle, a very, very significant word in Tibetan. It just means up. So we're taking refuge in these because these are means for realizing Buddhahood. The next line has to do with Dzogchen teachings themselves, and that is it's kind of the fruitional refuge. That's where we will ultimately rest, and it is in the essence of the mind, which is empty, the nature of the mind, which is clear, and the pervasive, all-pervasive, supreme heart of compassion and energy, which is the moving love mandal. And then the last line is, until full bodhi I seek refuge. So we sing through that. And as we sing through that, the visualization for now is you would imagine yourself in a beautiful Pure Land, surrounded by everything's made of light and jewels made of light. You're in your ordinary form. In front of you is Guru Rinpoche on a lotus, and a sun and moon disk is on top of that lotus. You have your male relatives on your right, on your female relatives on your left. Your enemies are in front of you, and all beings behind you. We usually get somebody who says, I have no enemies. If you have no enemies, just pick one of the numerous terrorist bosses around the globe who want to destroy all Americans, and you included. I'm sorry, and they are your enemy, whether you like it or not. There are people on this planet who want to kill you. They are your enemy. And if you don't know what they look like, just imagine that what they look like. So enemies, male relatives on your left, females on your males on your right, females on your left, and behind you all sentient beings. And so you're just reciting the refuge with Guru Rinpoche in space in front of you on a lotus and a sun and moon disk. And I'm sure, again, there's probably a picture to that extent, a hard essence of the vast expanse.
Page 10.
Page 10. On page 10 of our recitation book. And those are online, of course. Yeah, wonderful picture of Guru Rinpoche. I think that's hanging in my living room. So come on down and visit if you need to. At the end of that recitation, light streams forward from Guru Rinpoche, strikes this whole visualization. We all become light. We get drawn up into Guru Rinpoche, and from the periphery to the center, the light slowly, slowly dissolves. And then there's sort of the purity of space. And just we'll read what Kitsen Sando says. So he says, like a rainbow disappearing into space dissolves into his heart, which melts away until it is the size of a mustard seed, and finally this small drop also vanishes. Only empty space remains. Consider that your mind and that of each member of the assembly have thereby become undifferentiably mixed. Sustain this knowledge in space like meditative equipoise as long as you can. This is page 121. So you are mixing your mind with the mind of Guru Rinpoche at that point. Complete realization, space-like wisdom, and you stay like that briefly. And then at the end, Guru Rinpoche reappears and you reappear as yourself. But you do have some sense as everything is kind of magically like an illusion, like a dream. The visualization stays the same for the next recitation, which is the bodhichitta, and we'll have a lot more to say when we teach that. But in terms of the recitation, Ho, like moons in water, sights deceive us, so things are illusory and without substance, but we think they're really solid, and even modern science is in accord with this. We ever roam bound in cyclic chains, so we are bound in cyclic existence. So all may rest in their clear mind sphere, so that we may install everybody in their clear mind sphere. And these are beautiful Tibetan words, which we won't go into right now. I raise Bodhi through the four boundless states. And again, we won't go into the teachings here, but we're making a commitment to achieve full Buddhahood based on love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. At the end of this, we will do it in accord. It's a little bit different from what Ketan Sambo has, actually. But just imagine that Guru Rinpoche melts into light, and you then dissolve into light, and then from the periphery to the center, you dissolve. And at the end, and that's in accord with Ajahn Rinpoche's instructions. And at the end, consider your mind to be one with the minds of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and stay within meditative equipoise on emptiness as long as you can, without any thoughts or conceptions. Now, of course, many of you will say, I have no idea what emptiness means, and that's fine. If your mind is space-like, if your mind is quiet, or just imagine it to be as quiet or as still as you can bring it to within the context of that practice. Of course, for beginners, you might just find your mind is riotous, no problem. Just let your mind be as it is, but without trying to work with it, just be restful. So at the end of you've had the same visualization, but here light comes to you and everything around you collapses, and then you collapse into space. Any questions? Okay. Vajrasattva, on the gallop. You know, one could be tempted to call Vajrasattva kind of the be-all and end-all of meditations. And that's just to say that the elements of Vajrasattva, if you get Vajrasattva more or less straight, you've pretty much got the template of many, many, many tantric practices, many tantric visualization practices. And so it's worth your while to read the practice carefully and to practice it. But right now we're just doing the recitation. So there's an ah at my crown on a lotus, and there's a moon on the lotus, and you'll just have 4 finger widths above your head. And then again, this is in accord with Ajahn Rinpoche's instructions. There's a hum, and from that hum, a white letter hum, and Vajrasattva appears, white, jeweled, clear with Vajra and bell. And you can see what that looks like in the picture. And he is in Yab Yum, which is the union of the male and female energies. His consort is named Great Pride. And there's a moon disk at their heart. And in that heart, the 100-syllable mantra is going to be rotating. I'll say more about that in a second. The mantra circles, nectar flows, cleansing ills, harms, faults, and blocks. So the basic attitude that you want to have in practicing, and we'll say a lot more of this as we teach it, but you're in a sense confessing and purifying all non-virtues since beginningless time that obstruct your capacity for realization. And this is a paradigm of creation and completion stage practice. So there's a home that starts off on the lotus with the moon, and then right at the chest point where Vajrasattva and his consort are in union, there's a small moon disk, and there's a hum in the middle, white, and then we set up the letters of the mantra. We imagine the letters to begin with once clockwise. But then when we're going to be reciting it, the letters are going clockwise. So they're set up counterclockwise, they rotate clockwise. Set up counterclockwise, rotate clockwise. Got that? And so as the letters rotate, we're imagining nectar pouring down through the stem of the lotus, and our bodies are filled with the blissful nectar, milk-like, radiant. And then out of the pores of our body, and this is where your creativity can come in, and also out of the organs of elimination. So that's the anus and the sphincter and the bottom of your feet. You can have centipedes and spiders and all sorts of, I like lobsters. And those are kind of the manifestations of broken promises and pledges. So certainly in Buddhist practice, there are a lot of vows. There are the vows of individual liberation. There are the vows of the bodhisattva, and there are vows associated with tantric practice. They always get broken. Over many lifetimes, we've broken all of them. So we're just in a blanket way confessing all of those. And that stuff is coming out by way of centipedes, spiders, lobsters. What are the scorpions? Like that. There's also like black ink coming out of all of these parts of your body. There's illness in the form of blood and pus. And this is all pouring out, and then 9 stories below you, there is a being in the form of a red bull, and there can be subsidiary beings like that around that red bull. It represents the Lord of Death, and then all the subsidiaries are beings representing your karmic debts. And as we're becoming filled with this milk-like, pleasurable, blissful ambrosia, all this gunk is pouring out of us. And these beings below us, 9 stories below, are really happy, getting all this blood, pus, shit, piss, vomit. I mean, really disgusting, gross outpourings. And you can really go to town if you can see it, smell it, touch it. Just, it's all pouring out. And they're just happier than heck, eating it all up. I guess they're kind of, some people have had the experience in maybe third world countries of shitting or pissing over dogs or pigs, and they just thrill if you go to the bathroom. And so that's what these beings are like. They're just thrilled consuming our waste. And we are, and we'll talk more about this, having an attitude of contrition for anything wrong we've ever done, and feeling that we're confessing this and making it open and promising not to do this in the future. And then when we've recited the mantra 21 times, we will have completed that part of the long mantra. So in this period, what we really want people to be doing is really out loud reciting this mantra, which takes some getting used to. So please practice it. And you might on the first day find that just saying it once takes you 5 minutes. I don't imagine that exactly. But start reciting it at a pace that seems workable for you, and see if you can get up to some kind of semblance of quicker, where you could actually do 21 without spending your whole day. I mean, you don't want to take an inordinate amount of time doing it, but just pace yourself and see if you can get used to it some. At the end of that, Vajrasattva is pleased and dissolves into you, and you become Vajrasattva. You can do this in Yabum, or you can do it as just Vajrasattva. It's a little bit dealer's choice. Some people might find it easier to do one or the other. And so the next part is quite interesting. So you're Vajrasattva, and let's say you're in union. You're sending out light, and the first thing you do is at the tips of this light are what are called offering goddesses. We won't go too into it right now, but just goddesses offering to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And again, if you want to do it simply, just imagine Guru Rinpoche in front of you, and you're sending out light, and at the tip of the light, there are offering goddesses that are dissolving into Guru Rinpoche. But in this instance, you actually, a little bit more, I misspoke. Scratch that. You should actually imagine minimally sort of 5 colors of Vajrasattva all around you. It's fine if you have Guru Rinpoche somewhere in there, but really there should be, the syllables are colored. You have an Om in your front, you have Benzra on the right, you have Sa, which is red on the back, Benzra is golden. You have To on the left, which is, it looks like Twa, but all the Tibetans pronounce it as To, as green. And then Hum is in the heart, blue. And so you have white Vajrasattvas in your front of you. It sounds harder than it is once you get into it. Golden Vajrasattvas to your right, red Vajrasattvas to your back, and green Vajrasattvas to your left. The orientation, we have this in our book, in our recitation book, just you know that Om is in the front. And once you get Om in the front, everything else works out. You can do it with the English letters. So you're sending light out, and the first thing you do is send out this light with the offering goddesses at the end, and you're offering up to Vajrasattva deities and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but we don't want to make it too complicated, but for now just let's imagine it's Vajrasattva beings in front of you, kind of white ones, to the right of you golden ones, to the back of you red ones, to the left of you green ones, and above and below blue ones. Don't get too technical about it all. And so light's streaming out to all of these Vajrasattvas in these colors, and it comes back to you and you're blessed. And then you're sending out light to the 6 realms. And so one of the things that goes on, we will get to the teachings on the 4 mind reversals. There's a very, very detailed description of the 6 realms. But in brief, you will be sending out light to the hell realm, the hungry ghost realms, the animal realms, the human realms, the demigod realms, and the god realms. And that light removes the sufferings associated with those realms. And those beings in turn become Vajrasattva and Yabum. And Yabum just means father, mother. So it's in union. Everybody is reciting, you're reciting Om Bendra Sato Hum, Om Bendra Sato Hum, Om Bendra Sato Hum, Om Bendra Sato Hum, at least 111, 1 mala's worth, Om Bendra Sato Hum. And so you are reciting this, you are removing all the suffering of the 6 realms. The beings first have their suffering removed, then they're happy, then they become the 5 colors of the Vajrasattva deities. So they become white Vajrasattva Yabhyum, golden Vajrasattva Yabhyum, red Vajrasattva Yabhyum, green Vajrasattva Yabhyum, blue above and below, and everybody's chanting, all the deities are in Pure Lands. It's all light, it's beautiful, and then it all starts contracting. You've recited your 108, or it might be 540. I mean, it takes some time to do the visualization, obviously. So you recite it, and then everything starts contracting into you. The light, again, from the periphery to the center, contracts, and in your heart, on this moon disk, there are two ways to do it, according to Adzan Rinpoche, either gradually or simultaneously. If you're doing it gradually, the Om dissolves into the Bendra into the Sa into the To into the Hum. And the Hum you just want to do a little bit gradually if you're doing it in English, and then just have it very, very gradually dissolve into space. My one maybe quintessential instruction for the evening, if you don't get any other quintessential instruction for the evening, is if you really want to get serious about practicing Tibetan Buddhism, please learn how to visualize the Hum syllable. It is the syllable in the center of the Om Bendra Sato Hum. It's the blue syllable in the middle here. And when we get around to teaching the visualization, even if you do all the other syllables in English, it would be great if you could learn this one in Tibetan. There are many reasons that I won't go into that you should know this particular syllable visually to begin with. And so if you could put a little bit of effort, I know it's a little bit complicated to look at, but it is the mind of the Buddha, and it's very, very omnipresent in Buddhist practices, Tibetan Buddhist practices. But for now, if you can't get there, just slowly imagine, let's say, the H going into the U with the M, slowly dissolving, okay? And then there's just space. And then, I think Hitsen Sangbo says, rest in the true nature beyond reference point. So again, you rest in this space. And that is the equivalent of what's called the completion phase of tantric practice. And then everything else appears back suddenly. I didn't think to say this, but if you're practicing just reciting this part so far, just to keep things within a kind of norm of practice, maybe at the end of reciting those three pieces, at least do just the short sharing the merit that we already do quite regularly on Tuesday nights. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru, lead all beings everyone to reach to that great ground. What's the idea about sharing merit? Any given merit is kind of finite, it's considered in size, but if you conjoin that merit with a large field of visualization or intention, then the power of that merit swells to the power of the multiplier of the number of beings that you're imagining associated with that merit. So when we dedicate a merit to an infinite number of beings, it's considered safe, as it were. But if, like, I did 21 Vajrasattvas and then I would immediately go out and shoot somebody, that kind of negates that merit. But if it's like dedicated to infinite number of beings, it's like throwing a little contamination into the ocean. It's really not going to harm the ocean because there's such a dilution factor. That's the thought. We'll talk more about that, obviously, eventually as well. But so if you could just do the sharing merit briefly. So I have covered what I wanted to cover with the students a little bit breathlessly. I hope it was useful. Are there any questions from abroad in the land or people here?
So I noticed in the circle down below, it's Om Vajrasattva Hum, but in the text up above, it's Om Bindra sattva.
Yes, so what you're noticing is the difference between a kind of one form of transliteration and another form of transliteration. The Tibetans mispronounce Sanskrit in a very, very predictable manner. And sometimes when we do these booklets, we go to the Sanskrit, and sometimes we go to the Tibetan, and sometimes we go halfway. So in fact, Om Benzra Sattva Hum is halfway, because Om is, yes, they pronounce it that way. Benzra is how Tibetans pronounce Vajra. Sattva is not how they pronounce Sattva, they pronounce it Sato, but we don't actually have that marked here. And Hum is the way they pronounce Hum. So hopefully you will accomplish everything in practice if you say Om Benzra Sattva Hum, or you pronounce Om Benzra Sato Hum. Either will be okay, but they really do say Om Benzra Sato Hum. And in terms of the letters, you can use the letters that are here. You don't have to change that. But in reading them, it'd be best to know that you're reciting Om Benzra Sato Hum. A good catch.
We get a more elaborate system now in the newer books where we have the Tibetan pronunciation and the Sanskrit.
Yeah. You're looking at the transcriber in chief.
There's a new booklet coming out?
Yeah.
And some, well, okay.
Someday.
So are there any questions from anybody at a distance? I know we're a little bit clunky tonight because you would have to unmute, but please feel free to unmute and ask if you want to.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
Earlier
Jessica.
when you talk about this and you say counterclockwise, as in what the mantra or what would
Okay,
be
so
counterclockwise?
you're gonna use the English alphabet, and on this moon disk, you are going to be visualizing Om Benzra Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benzra Sato Teno Patikta Didame Bala. So this is all, when you set it up, counterclockwise.
Got it.
And then when you're going to recite it, the letters are going to be clockwise. They're rotating clockwise.
My
Yes.
question was, when they set up the letters, it was also the purification of speech.
Don't go there. We're not talking about that tonight.
Okay.
That's not on
Okay.
tonight's agenda.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
Okay,
No.
so for this,
That's not part of tonight's agenda.
No. Vajra,
We're not doing, yes, go on.
With Vajra,
Yes.
when do they set up the?
When you start setting up the visual, well, for Vajrasattva, you go through first Ah, and then you imagine the lotus 4 finger widths above your head. Lotus, moon disk, Hum, and Vajrasattva appears. And then after Vajrasattva appears with his consort at their heart, you set up the mantra. And there's a Hum in the middle of the moon disk, and then you set up the mantra. Good question.
Can we get a copy of your notes?
They are nothing more than what's in here. So you can have the notes.
I have the book, yeah.
Yeah. And in this book.
I think I have that too.
Yeah.
I'll find it. I'll get it.
Good. Any questions from afar? Please don't be bashful. Or let us know you're alive, even. Anybody want to let us know that you're alive? Please.
I'm alive.
Alive.
Thank you so much.
Is that Richard?
That was James.
James.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just sent in some comments on the chat box too, just while you guys were talking, but I don't know if you could see that. I didn't want to interrupt in the middle, but.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Hold on, we're going to go
I didn't
to
have
those.
that open.
It's okay at this point. I was just, but I don't have any questions, but I'm listening, so thank you. Yeah.
I don't see anything in the chat.
No?
Did I completely miss that? Or maybe when you left the first time it erased them?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Weird.
Mark may have them.
I see his comments in the email.
In the email?
Window in my email with comments from and
Oh. Well, James, would you just like to ask your question?
No, there was no question before. You were asking stuff like, "Oh, can we hear you?" I was trying to let you know without everybody screaming at one time. You know. Anyway, so yeah, I don't have a specific question per se, but I think I was at least trying to respond. So, but I just want to update you guys.
Yeah. We appreciate it.
If at times you could speak a little bit more into the microphone, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
I can try and
thank you.
pass it around more too to the other people who speak.
That would be great.
We were extremely technologically challenged tonight, and welcome to Beta Land. And you know, despite 2 days of preparation and working on all of those 2 days, you know, come the moment of fruition and decided to crap out. So, you know, it's a work in progress.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So if there are no further comments from people abroad in the land, we will just do the brief dedication, and we'll send the students out, and I'll just spend about 10 minutes talking to the mentors, and we'll do a brief dedication then. We won't have a break. I'm sorry. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru, lead all beings, everyone, to reach to that very ground. Thank you all so much for attending. May there be great fruition in your lives and for all sentient beings.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Thank
I'll ask
you.
mentors in training to stay, please.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Dave. Richard and Carolyn. Thank you.
Let me keep it for now.
On standby.
Okay. Bye, y'all. Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
No, it's better. It's better. Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. I kept thinking maybe I can sneak over there. Okay, Sharon. Sorry. Yeah, several people look cold. That's why I figured.
Good night.
Hey, Sharon, would you?
You're welcome. Thank you.
On pause, but yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay, good.
So it will be a little bit hard, but I certainly would like to hear from people abroad and hear just for mentors in training, if you've had contact with your students, are there any issues that you're concerned about? Are there any issues concerning the video meetings or video recordings, anything that's up for you? I don't know how to do it with people at a distance. Maybe we could call on people because we can see people. Maybe we could just, Carolyn, maybe you could report in and just let us know if you've had any contact or any issues.
Great, thank you, Lama Hardy. Hello, everyone. I have had a brief email exchange with one and have not heard from the other. I did reach out to him and have not heard back. I spoke with Claire today about both, and then there was some confusion about a third, but I think that's been resolved. Thank you, Claire. And the one that I did hear from had some very good questions, and she was concerned about the recording. I did discuss that with Claire and know that you've been working on that. So I think, Harvey Law, you answered those questions in your comments this evening. And I look forward to hear what additional instructions you might have for us. But she was definitely concerned about that aspect and was considering her continuation in the program. So I'm happy that I saw her there this evening, I think, on the side. So I'm looking forward to that being resolved. And that's the sum total of my contact thus far.
Yeah. And so we don't have to get into any kind of life or death struggle with people. If somebody really, really has some issues with that, we'll probably just let it be unless, at some point maybe they'll come around. But we want people to be able to do the practice. And, it's a little bit of a loss to the mentors in training, but I don't think at this point I want to make it just an absolute line in the sand.
Okay, so I will resolve that with them. The other thing I would say, I sent a note to Lama Ann also. I viewed the videos for this the first 2 weeks. I haven't looked at the ones now for this new section, but I found them to be, perhaps it was the context of the week prior for me, but I found them to be quite clear, enormously clear, inspirational, and realistically supportive. And for new practitioners or for those committed to lifelong practice, for me, it was just a great thing to see those. So feedback to all of you for putting this together. Thank you. It was good for me. I hope for the newer students also, but thank you. Much gratitude.
Terrific. Thank you. Nancy, can you unmute and just let us know if you've had contact?
I have not made contact. I will get on it.
You have?
No.
No.
Nancy's person became a little confused and
Okay.
thought she was with Carolyn. I went back and checked that email actually, and I got it right, but somehow I think it got a little bit confused. But they're all on the same page now as of this afternoon. So I'm sorry, Nancy. It was confusing.
So good.
Good. Any questions about anything?
No, I'm kind of enthused about the whole project.
Great. Thank you. Great to see you. Thank you for participating.
It's really fun to be at a distance. I have a miserable cold and none of you can get it.
That's definitely one of the few but real benefits to doing it this way. It's very antiseptically pure. I think I see Richard. I wonder if we could have you unmute, Richard, and we can hear from you.
Yes, thank you, Harvey, and thank you again for your foundational practice teachings this evening. I don't think, even having gone through them, I don't think we can hear those instructions enough times. I think we get something new out of it every time we get instruction in it. So thank you for that. I have one student assigned to me. I've had an email exchange with him. Terribly informative, but he seems interested. I have an email to him asking about a preliminary video meet this week, later this week sometime, and I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Great.
So that's.
Any questions or issues coming up for you?
No, not yet. And he, no indication from him that he had any qualms about the recording the video, which I agree will be terribly helpful, especially for me. Uncomfortable though it may be, but That's good. We have to live in the challenge, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Mark, have you had any contact with your student?
I've had contact with one of my two so far, and it's been, let's see, so he just gave me an update of how he was fitting the practice in a couple little bumps in the road, and I emailed back. This is just over the last few days, and I emailed back, kind of been trying to encourage any reflection he wanted to give on that, and that's where we are at right now.
Terrific. Any issues or concerns about videoing or anything else?
I mean, not on my part. I mean, I have to do this all the time. So. Okay. One thought I had for I don't know if we could meet here and do that like during the weekday sometime, if that would be too cumbersome for the staff to have like the meeting and it being recorded in person here at Dunn Mountain.
You want to meet with your student at Dunn Mountain?
To do the video recording.
I don't think there's anything burdensome. You just need to figure out how you're going to do the recording and what space you're going to use. Okay. Everyone involved staff.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well,
because you can do it at home over
yeah.
Skype.
Okay.
Or whatever FaceTime.
I don't have familiarity with that, so I'll email Claire about it.
So Claire is going to send out Claire's own sheet.
I was wondering about that as well. Because, I just had a session with Jessica, for example.
Yes.
So that was in person, and it was lovely for it to be in person. So in that event, we would have just, although we weren't meant to record the first one, but the second one, if we meet in person, we would just record it. In what fashion?
Well, in some ways, it's a bit more challenging to record in person than if you're online.
Right.
Though you might want to, some people I know do this kind of thing just by using FaceTime, or FaceTime would probably be but you have to see if you can get a recording off of FaceTime.
I've been thinking about this because I also met the person I've met with, we met here, and what I was thinking actually is I have this little thing that props up your phone. I mean, you could just take a video right on your phone, and it wouldn't necessarily be super high quality, but I mean, would that be acceptable, Harvey Law?
The only issue with phones that I know of is that sometimes transferring them by email or whatever can become a bit of a challenge because the data usage usually exceeds email allowances. That's my experience. I mean, for 5 or 10 minutes, it might not be the challenge, but
no, right. What I'm saying is, if you just on your phone, you have a video recording capability.
Right.
So if you do that, then I mean, I have
recording into what?
To your gallery. It saves it direct.
Right, but then you need to transfer it somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. The way I have it set up on my phone is I have a Google Drive account. So as long as you have internet access, like if you have Wi-Fi here and you have Google Drive or you have Dropbox, you can install that app on your phone, upload it to Dropbox or to Google Drive or iCloud or whatever cloud-based server you have, and then that way you have it available, so when you're going to share, from your chat or whatever, you can have the video locally on your hard drive.
Let's make sure that for 5 or 10 minutes, everything you said may be indeed true. And when you get up to an hour, it really may not be true. It becomes a whole other issue. So you run into bandwidth issues, you run into most of the services that you're talking about, it just becomes an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
So, but on 5 or 10 minutes, it may not be an obstacle. It may not be a problem whatsoever. So let's see if people can do it on their phone and they can then use Google Drive or whatever.
Okay.
Fine.
So this might have to be something that I do some test runs on to see what works and what file size, you know, what settings you would need to use and what works and what doesn't. But I'll try and figure that out.
And in general, you want to be doing that kind of file transfer where there's a Wi-Fi involved, not on something where you may have some limitations to your data plans. Anybody who hasn't worked with video before, you will chew through both memory on your phone and memory, if you're allotted to it through your phone service, like crazy. You'll go through gigabytes worth of data with even a small video.
That also depends on the settings. You can choose what quality to record in, so that might be an important part of what we should figure out.
Though I would in general recommend people shoot in high quality, because if it starts getting grainy, it's not going to be good.
The other option that we have, Harvey, I don't know how you would feel about this, but I mean, we have, you know, for instance, the Sony camera in the back in the temple here, that if somebody has,
No.
Nope, all right. Never mind.
People can use their phones, or they can iPads or their computers. It's totally doable with FaceTime. You just have to figure out the configuration of the people. You could both be looking at the screen simultaneously, frankly, and have your conversation. It's doable.
If anybody wants to take this on and figure out a way of doing it, then tell me. That would be great as well.
Yeah, or you know, this could be something we use the Google group for, just people reporting what does or doesn't work, and the mentors could be doing this using the Google group.
Oh, okay.
Janet, do you have anything to report?
Well, at the beginning I had two, and now I have one.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, it's been good.
You've had contact?
Yeah, I contacted both of them, but I'm a little confused because you're saying that they should contact us and not us contact them. What if they stop contacting us? I mean,
good question.
Would we
Claire?
Yeah, I don't know that we've actually like talked about this and decided what we should do, but I mean, I realize now the thing I forgot to mention to the mentors is to have just some kind of log, you know, where you're kind of lightly keeping track of the contact that you have. So, you know, maybe we can, when we have, maybe I can send around an email to all the mentors and just see, you know, what people feel would be a reasonable way of doing that. But I can easily make up a spreadsheet. You know, you can download it and print it out and just kind of check off, oh yeah, we had an email on this day, you know, so you have some sense of like who's responding, who's not. I mean, I feel like our intention is not to say you shouldn't reach out, but more that you know, it's not your job to keep track of it, but it certainly seems like it would be okay to email people.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, again, this is a, you know, at will kind of, it's a free endeavor and interchange between us and students. And so if in a month a student hasn't contacted us, we definitely should send them an email and just, you know, find out what's happening and what their intentionality is. And that's totally fine. And, you know, hopefully you'll get a response. If you don't get any response to that, that will tell you something. And if you get a response that, you know, just underwater for a month, but I do want to, you know, set something up or a video meeting. Yeah, I mean, it's not ironclad. It's just if somebody seems to be fading, I would certainly reach out to find out what's happening. And I'm very curious to find out, you know, where are we at. I'm checking in on you. Sharon, have you had contact?
Yes, so I had a meeting, an in-person meeting this evening before the program with one of my folks, and the other one, I've had email contact now twice. They've been traveling, so we really haven't had a meaningful exchange. And I don't think they've been able to see the videos and get started, really. So I just want to say something, though, about this question of, you know, the students versus the mentors reaching out. And, you know, I think what you just said makes sense. And I just think it's important, though, that we establish that the expectation at this point is that the student initiate the contact. Because I think it's a little bit confusing. Just watching people during this presentation, it was clear to me that people were trying to understand that. And it may be that, if your people didn't reach out to you, they may have been waiting for you to reach out, or maybe you thought you were supposed to reach out to them and did before they could. So I just think at this point we can't really judge how it's going, but rather we just need to reiterate that the expectation is that the student make that weekly email contact. Because otherwise I think it's going to...
No, that's excellent. So can you reiterate that and maybe a follow-up email from tonight?
Yes, and just for the record, I've already let people know that at least twice.
I know you have. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Did you notice this evening that people were sort of like...
Yeah, and that's part of the reason I wanted to ask people to read their emails, because I'm happy to reiterate it. I've been sending a lot of emails, so I can't really blame people for not, reading all of them, but it may just be a thing where I have to say it again and again,
So you and I even have had experiences where something was clearly in an email and you completely, and me too, I sometimes just don't even see the whole email or part.
Yeah.
So it's very, very tedious. It's a completely imperfect medium. And my assumption is people are well-meaning, but stuff just doesn't get communicated in emails. So I know it's a lot of work and it's very burdensome, but let's just be safer than sorry.
And once we've established this, then I think that's something you can let go of.
Yeah.
I think it's just important for the mentors and the students to recognize that that's the expectation.
Yeah, and that the mentors need to let that be known to the students.
Yeah.
And those mentors that haven't been here should have that in an email.
Can I ask you, so as someone who, I'm sure we all do, but as someone who goes through high volume of email, I think one safe assumption is that an email is kind of like the equivalent of 1 or 2 maybe PowerPoint slides, and you can't, after a certain point, a certain amount of volume, is not digestible, and the format is not necessarily digestible. So sometimes what I've seen, if you want to, so one option would be just to cut down volume for email and almost have it like bullet point, and have, or another option would be you have one main point bolded, and then you have some descriptor, and so the people who aren't going to digest it, at least they got the bullet point headline, and that way maybe streamline consumption of data.
It would mean more emails, but if each email is getting through to people, maybe that's better.
But really the point is the mentors can also help. Now that I think all the mentors are hopefully clear, that the expectation is that the student will initiate contact, that it's not up to us to do that, then the mentors can help instill that expectation.
Right, but we've only got maybe 75% of the mentors online, so we got a handful who need to be told that in emails.
Yeah.
And so part of this is, I think Mark raises actually a quite profound issue long term. This is beta internet foundational practices. How do we convey information? There's video, but also there's, within the whole realm of email, what are the effective ways of conveying significant information? And there's a learning curve there, clearly. And so let's just take that to heart.
Yeah, and I like the point that Sharon makes too, that, maybe a better way of diffusing stuff like this is to make sure the mentors know, let them communicate it to the students. It's much more personal than a group email from me too.
Yeah.
But all of the above, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to keep people too long. I feel very, very good about the evening. I don't know that there's any way to prevent the kind of preliminary glitches. I thank everybody for your patience, and let's just dedicate as usual. Let's do let's do the short dedication. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru. Lead all beings everyone to reach that great ground. On to the third for His Holiness. In a pure land ringed by snow mountain, source of bliss and benefit for all. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, lotus feet, 800 of years, build that stage with your activities. Om Swasti, flawless refuge sources give blessings, teacher, protector, kind Dharma, Lord. Your made truth and Gyatso wondrous good, lotus feet ever, deeds everywhere. Namo Guru, glorious, wise, bright sun and kind song. Now that your work here has subsided, please think of our pains and suffering. We pray you quickly take form again. And in the future, maybe you can get a copy of Anila's prayer to people, and we'll be reciting that as well. And then Om Swati. And be like the waxing moon, may your life and merit flourish, grow. Through the threefold find this, live long and hide of God's treasure, spiritual sweet roots, God's compassion, of God's faithful
be realized at once.
May there be a great fine new temple, a great seat for all high practice learning, which having spread in all directions, male and female yogis everywhere, practice and prayer. You may not have this, but it's very auspicious. The recitation after dedication. Sing, sound, minds are God's fine chose true form, science and wisdom in endless play. Through this profound and secret practice, may one with the one
articulate.
Thank you so much, everyone. May it be fruitful for all beings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Did we let people know that October 22nd was the put in an email?
Yeah.
Betty.
Okay. Very good.